is death, and death is life.
Pretty edgy, right? But you know what? That's not me saying that. That's what you're told in this world. So don't blame me. I didn't do it. I didn't turn life into a miserable scramble for money. I didn't turn death into a fantasy of paradise. Capitalism and the Abrahamic religions did those things. Pretty neat scam the oligarchs and the priests have cooked up together, don't you think? They turn your life into misery, and then they promise you it'll get better when you're dead. Let's get into the fray. The heaven and hell grift never did much to turn my crank, honestly. Heaven is boring. Hell is boring. Monotonous pleasure or monotonous pain. I doubt after the first year or two of that, anyone would even be able to tell the difference. Heaven and hell are mindscapes. You can visit them anytime you want. Just close your eyes and you're there. Heaven! Oh, hell! They're not interesting places. Variety is the spice of life, right? And neither of those ideas contains any variety. Vacuous, endless happiness or insipid eternal suffering, both meaningless when they lack context. And you say to me, you don't understand, TJ. In heaven you're happy because you're in the presence of God. That's the context. Well, you're already in the presence of God, aren't you? You're watching me, right? I thought God was everywhere. Isn't that something Christians believe? God is everywhere. So then why isn't this heaven? You might also say, you don't understand, TJ. In hell, you're suffering because you rejected Christ. That's the context. Oh, okay. You want to talk about who has rejected Christ? Look no further than the average Christian. Read the Sermon on the Mount. Christ extols the poor in spirit, meaning those with great spiritual hunger. I see very little spiritual hunger among the Christians of today. I see material hunger. Christ extols those who mourn, meaning those who feel a deep sorrow because they see suffering and injustice in the world. I see little mourning among the Christians of today. I see cruelty. I see bigotry. They are not mourners. They don't cry at the injustice of this world. They are the authors of it. And I mourn them. Christ extols the meek. I see little meekness among the Christians of today. I see wrath. I see spite. Christ extols the merciful. I see little mercy among the Christians of today. I see relentless cruelty, and they take pride in their cruelty. Christ extols the pure in heart. I see little pure-heartedness among the Christians of today. I see absolute insincerity. Christ extols the peacemakers. I see little peacemakers among the Christians of today. I see bloodlust. Christ extols those who are persecuted for their righteousness. I see few who are persecuted for their righteousness among the Christians of today. I see self-righteous persecutors. Christ said, love your enemies. He said, judge not, lest ye be judged. He said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Today's Christians are fueled by hatred, filled by judgment, and their golden rule is, do unto others as you wish. So if rejecting Christ is the pathway to hell, then hell is teeming with Christians. You cannot claim to me that you are a follower of Christ when your entire existence is an affront to every word that he preached. Am I saying that I typify the attributes extolled by Christ? Well, I hunger for truth, be it spiritual, be it otherwise. But I do it without humility. I don't have a shred of humility in me. I mourn the injustice of the world, but my mourning is not sorrow, it is rage. I have my meek side, but I despise it. I can be merciful, but I can be merciless too. It depends on my mood. My heart is not pure. I do seek peace over conflict, though. But I have no righteousness to persecute. No! I clearly do not embody the attributes praised by Christ, but nor do I lay claim to be a Christian. I have claimed for many years to be an atheist, and that was true. I suppose it still is, technically. I cannot tell you that there is any deity that I believe in, but I also cannot tell you that there is any deity that I disbelieve in either. And if the need arose to believe in a deity for some pragmatic accomplishment of an objective, I would not hesitate to do so. I would disregard the belief when it no longer served me. And as of yet, I haven't had an occasion to believe in any gods. Which is strange because I have met gods. I have met goddesses. I've met them in the realms of my mind. Were these realms that I created, or were they external realms that I internalized and filtered through the lens of my own perceptions? Doesn't really matter, does it? The answers to such questions would intrigue me, but they aren't of any practical value. I live in this reality, and here the only God is me. Just as you are the only God in your reality. So can I lay claim to the title of atheist when I see myself as God? Just like Christ's crown, I think it gets a little thorny. Just like the craps table, I think it gets a little dicey. Just like the BDSM dungeon, I think it gets a little cagey. So let's dispense with the amazing atheist, shall we? It was a fun little persona to inhabit for a while, but I think it's run its fucking course. It said what it needed to say, it did what it needed to do, and now it can be placed back into the drawer. For now, you can call me TJ. In the future, maybe I'll tell you a new name or two. But for now, let's return to the topic of religion. I don't want Christians to feel as though I'm picking on them. Islam deserves just as much ire, if not more. With a few notable exceptions, the countries with Muslim majorities are barbaric cesspits of cruelty and bigotry. Women are treated like chattel. LGBT people are butchered. Domestic violence and sexual assault are normalized. With Christians, you can at least point to good things in their book. The Old Testament is pretty hideous, to be sure, but the teachings of Christ are not. Well, sometimes the teachings of Christ are beautiful and inspiring, other times not so much, especially when viewed in the context of their time. The same cannot be said of Islam. The Quran is replete with cruelty, with hatred. What do you expect of a tome authored by a brutal warlord? Skeptics have noted 532 instances of cruelty in the Quran and only 78 instances of goodness. Obviously, there's an element of subjectivity there, but you need simply skim the book to get its flavor. Hardly a page goes by without something viciously cruel or disgustingly hateful. And of course, both Christianity and Islam were born out of Judaism. And so I don't exempt them from the criticism, especially at a time when the world's only Jewish state is engaging in human rights violations that would make Genghis Khan wince. The Jews did not invent monotheism, but they represent the oldest surviving contingent of it. And as far as I'm concerned, monotheism is the bane of human potential, because in a monotheistic religion, everything is tainted by the need to please God. Oh, God, is that good enough for you? Please, God, are you pleased? Are you happy? The only thing human beings are meant to strive for is pleasing God. Wisdom isn't striving to understand yourself and the world. It's striving to understand God. Humility isn't being humble about your own ignorance, recognizing your own flaws. It's about being humble before God. Love isn't love of yourself. It isn't love of your family. It isn't love of your friends. It isn't love of your fellow human beings. It's love of God. Everything noble, everything beautiful about human beings has been subverted and retarded and twisted to serve the narcissistic machinations of a megalomaniacal daddy figure, which is really nothing more than a spiritual warhead controlled by the ruling class, aimed at all human flourishing. They have used the tool of God to turn life into death and death into life, and it all started with the Jewish idea that there is one God. Just one. And guess what he wants from you? I should say what it wants from you, because it's a concept, not an entity. It wants you to obey. And how do we know its will? Don't worry. The holy men will tell you. And wow, don't the holy men seem awfully cozy with the rulers? Isn't that funny? Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are plenty of criticisms to be made of the old polytheistic faiths that once ruled this world, but when you learn the myths of ancient civilizations, doesn't it feel as though there's more humanity to them? When I visit Greek mythology in particular, I find heroes whose exploits are rich with human emotion, ambition, and tragedy. Their gods were not presented as perfect beings, but as psychologically complex entities with flaws and strengths that reflected the very people who worshiped them. Unlike the singular, omnipotent deity of monotheistic traditions, these gods were woven into the very fabric of people's lives, woven in the very fabric of humanity. They loved, they envied, they raged, and they made mistakes. This, I think, is what gives the myths of ancient polytheistic faiths such an undeniable resonance. They didn't place their gods and heroes beyond the reach of human experience. They mirrored life, not as a paradise we might reach through obedience, but as a tempest of choices and consequences and emotions that every person must navigate. In these gods and heroes, people could see themselves not as subjects groveling for perfection, but as beings who could, through persistence and courage, transcend their own limitations. This approach to divinity didn't isolate the divine from the mortal. It brought the divine down to earth, making it relatable, fallible, and ultimately human. For the ancient Greeks, Divinity wasn't something distant. It wasn't something hovering above the world, detached, flawless. Instead, it spilled into every facet of life, tangled into the affairs of mortals, and woven into the earth itself. Gods were not unreachable ideals, but forces that could walk among us, inhabiting rivers and storms and cities, and most importantly, the passions of human beings. By replacing these myriad imperfect gods with a single perfect being, we created a divide between the divine and the world it was meant to animate. The sacred became a thing to revere from afar, something perfect, something absolute, while the world around us seemed to grow more mundane. We stopped seeing our daily lives, the conflicts, desires, even the vices, as reflections of something larger. Instead of gods who laughed and struggled and raged, we were left with a singular standard of purity and perfection. And in one breath, the clergyman will tell you, you are made in God's perfect image. But in the next breath, they'll tell you that you're a horrible, sinful wretch, unworthy of grace. The creation of the mono-God was the beginning of the gaslighting of humanity. The Abrahamic religions, to me, are a symbol of spiritual death. They robbed humanity of its soul, all while claiming they wanted to save it. When you look at the ancient pantheons, gods were as diverse as life itself. The divine could be joyous, it could be wrathful, it could be chaos. It could be nurturing. The gods embodied archetypes that allowed people to explore every facet of the human condition without shame. They offered channels for rage, sexuality, ambition, wisdom. Parts of ourselves that we were invited not to repress, but to integrate and to make sacred. The creation of a single supreme being introduced something entirely different into the paradigm. The severing of life into sacred and profane, worthy and unworthy. A hierarchy was established not just among gods, but within the human psyche itself. Suddenly, there were parts of ourselves we were meant to deny. Parts that were seen as shameful, needing to be cut off, needing to be cut away, to be acceptable before God. Our urges, our desires, our very bodies were cast as obstacles to overcome, rather than expressions of a dynamic and living cosmos. And the effect? Humanity became exiled from its own nature. The monogod did something truly insidious. It became a mirror for every authoritarian impulse within the human psyche, sanctifying submission, obedience, and guilt. People were taught to police their own thoughts, to fear their own emotions, to feel that to be human was, by default, to be fallen. The monogod was not just a theological evolution. It was a fundamental reordering of what it means to be alive, making us strangers in our own skin, teaching us to fear the very fire that makes us human. Atheism isn't the cure. Denying the reality of the monogod, that doesn't defeat it. Its power never came from reality. Its power comes from its ability to enforce, often brutally, its mandates of shame and conformity. And unfortunately, there are a great many atheists, intelligent people though they are, who cling to the edicts of the mono-God, even as they reject its existence. That's why Richard Dawkins, once a key figure of the short-lived New Atheism movement, now calls himself a cultural Christian. That's why Jordan Peterson cannot give you a straight answer to the question of whether or not he believes in God, because he doesn't believe in God, but he believes in believing in God. He believes in the inherent goodness of the mono-God. And he thinks that you and I, and you and I, are better off on our knees than on our feet. Probably because he wants us to blow him while we're down there. Well, fuck him, and fuck Richard Dawkins as well. Few things disgust me more than one who arrives at the conclusion that God is dead and immediately start working on ways to resurrect the wretched thing. Don't get me wrong, returning to the polytheism of old is not the cure either. The myths of those times are wonderful stories, but they aren't stories of us. They aren't stories of this time and this place. And humanity, for all its silliness, is no longer gullible enough to view them as literal truth. Even the mono-God's stranglehold has kind of ebbed in recent decades, right? It does show some signs of renewed vigor in this age of confusion, anxiety, and depression, but no one is going to turn to Zeus or Odin in the existential dread of the here and now. Those stories are too far removed from our modern struggles. But they will turn to the mono-God, oh yeah, because his churches are everywhere. Its churches are everywhere. Because the mono-God can still offer them a sense of community, a sense of purpose, albeit one that comes at the price of the castration of their soul. Most of them have never really gotten a chance to feel human anyway. They have no sense of what they're losing because they don't have any idea of what is within them. They live in a world where life is death and death is life. And so, they march into the arms of death, thinking that it will give their life meaning. But all they're going to find there is death. A new age demands a new spirituality, a new wisdom, a new perspective. It cannot merely be a reflection of these times, or it will only reinforce the problems of these times. It must be a response to the needs of these times, the needs that lay buried beneath the surface, the needs that are unaddressed by the religious and political powers of this age, the age of living death. The age where machines write poetry and human beings are too illiterate to read it. The age where most people are too busy hustling for scraps to meaningfully introspect, so they outsource their thinking to false gurus, tyrannical gods, and despotic leaders. The age of artlessness, the age of anxiety and depression, where existential dread has given way at long last to existential boredom. But I can't give you the answer. Do I look like I have the answer? I don't have it. Something that you and I must discover and create together. We begin by exploring the chaos of the mind and the stillness of the body. If my words have resonated with you at all, then I want you to find somewhere quiet. And if nowhere quiet is available to you, then put on some headphones and play some white noise. And I want you to sit perfectly still for 5 minutes' time. Don't even move the tongue in your mouth. Don't flutter your eyelids. Don't twitch a finger. The only movement in you should be the rising and falling of your chest as you breathe. This is going to be very difficult for many of you. I know it's difficult for me. Even a comfortable position can feel like agony as your body starts to rebel against the stillness. And in that time of stillness, allow your thoughts to wander wherever they may. Don't try to shape them. Don't try to take the reins and guide them where you think they belong. Become a passive observer of your own thoughts. This is going to be very difficult for many of you as well. Certainly difficult for me. What is the purpose of that exercise? Well, in this landscape of stimulus bombardment, we have become reactors, feeding our mind endless distractions. This thing, that thing. Ooh, look at this, look at that. If we are to discover a new path forward together, then we must first understand the true nature of ourselves. And we will never find that out if we don't silence the noise and still the body and let go of the reins of thought and allow ourselves to merely observe the internal. Your thoughts might be banal, or they might be strange, they might even be terrifying. Whatever they are, remember, you are not there to pass judgment upon them. You are there to observe them. If you wish, you may share the results of this exercise in the comments down below, or you may keep them entirely to yourself. Let's end with a quote that I think is appropriate to today's sermon, because of course that's what this was. You probably realize that by now. The mind is its own place, and in itself can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. John Milton, Paradise Lost. But there's one thing Milton failed to realize. Heaven and hell are only novelties. Pure pleasure and pure suffering are banalities. We should visit heaven and hell at our leisure, but always return to here. And of course you have the power to visit both realms. Why wouldn't you? They are of humanity. Humanity created them, so they are within humanity. They are within you. You just have to seek them out. Happy hunting, my friends.
If today's sermon resonated with you, show your support by liking this video, subscribing to this channel, and sharing your reflections in the comments below. If you wish to show further support, the links below can guide you to various places of relevance. Now bend over for your spanking. Oh, and carpe noctem.